There friends, Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. Thanks for being here. And this is a missing person segment. So if you're here for something else, no. Now, if the wind wasn't blowing about 20-30 knots outside right now, I would be out there because it's been a beautiful day in Montana, 50 degrees. First time we've reached 50, I think, this year. Snow's starting to melt, almost none on the valley floor here in the Flathead Valley. But it would be a good time to get out and start hiking around. And I plan on doing that quickly. In fact, I was down at the river the other day looking and didn't see any fish rising, but it's not going to be long. And we are looking forward to that. It's been kind of a lengthy winter, one of the longest ones since we've been up here. One of the coldest ones too, and one with the most snow. So, a couple of things. I was asked the other day, hey Dave, do you do something on your channel besides missing people? Yes. We're going to do our third class now on UFOs. I did 20 classes on Bigfoot, and our Bigfoot final is coming up next week. Be excited about that. It's essentially all done, and I'll be getting it to you in the next 5 or 6 days. And then we'd also do a news segment. I know some of you don't like the factual news, but I would please encourage you to watch, because we are in for some unbelievable productions in the news coming up that most people don't even know what's coming. And you're best be informed. So about missing people. Please, on YouTube right here, somebody has copied my CanAm Missing Project logo. And they say, hey, I sent this to you, and I've got this WhatsApp app, and I want you to respond to it. Don't respond to anything on this channel. I won't send you anything on the channel other than a response to what you post. But if you see something with my logo, look at the name next to it. Unless it says CanAm Missing Project, not coming from me. There's a fraudster out there, and he wants you to respond to that WhatsApp. Don't do it. I've said this at least 10 times, but it appears I have to say it every video. So that WhatsApp, it's not me. It's a fraudster. A piece of bottom scum. And so don't do that. Also, I don't sell our books, and there's 11 of them on missing people. I don't sell them on eBay, and I don't sell them on Amazon. The only thing that is sold on Amazon that's from me indirectly is the movie. And that's not from me, technically. It's from the distributor that posted it on Amazon. And you can watch the movie on Amazon, Vimeo, iTunes. And if you want to buy the DVD or Blu Ray from me, you can. And our transactional website is NA, like North America, nabigfootsearch.com. Go to the online store, and you'll find all of my books there. That's where I sell them. All of the videos, posters, etc. So, if you go onto Amazon and you buy my books, you're going to be paying $150 to $200 per book. Not me. I don't sell on there. A lot of people saying I do. No, I don't. And I wouldn't lie to you about that. So, whatever. Also, I don't sell on eBay. I don't sell on any other platform other than my website, the books. So I think that's enough. Yeah. But watch Missing 411, the UFO Connection. Please watch it and refer it to your friends. Get them to watch it. It's important. All right, the first letter. Hey, Dave. I just watched your missing persons video. The video had 0 commercial ads for the roughly 1 hour it ran. That itself was a shock, but not the cause of my writing. I write about earlier in this week's factual video. The factual video preceding today's video had so many commercials that it seemed I was watching a video of continuous commercials with an occasional interruption of the commercials with a few words of interruption by David Paulides. You had to be dedicated to your show in order to finish watching. That's not me. YouTube puts those ads on. It's really Google ads. I don't know how they decide to do it. I don't know why they decide and when they decide. Like on this video you're watching today, there may be ads, there may be not. I have no idea. Now there's a lot of you out there that have come up with some cool hints about how to bypass those ads. And so maybe you can make comments on this video so that the people watching can read and understand how. Now, I would appreciate it if you just let the video play all the way through. And then come back, rewind it, and then watch it. And I do believe you can watch it nonstop without videos. I think so, but I'm not sure. But anyhow, next email. Hey Dave, thank you for following up on the reporting these cases. So sad, these losses. I know it helps families that you're keeping their loved ones' stories in front of us. During my time on television news, I featured several rural search and rescue teams during spring workups in rural New Brunswick, Canada, a couple hours northeast of I-95 from Bangor, Maine. Also, as for cases near bodies of water, you may find this interesting. I was talking weekend movie ideas with a server at my regular diner, particularly Missing 411 The Hunted. She told me she grew up in an Ecuador village 6,000 feet high up in the Andes, and she was not surprised to hear the strange events in the wilderness. On that day, she left it at that. The next week, she came by my table to add that she enjoyed fishing alone several hours up Highway 400 north of Toronto in the wilderness. She was afraid your documentary might stir up childhood memories, so she could not watch it. Things got busy. She couldn't talk more, but several days later she sat at my table and told me and all the villagers in her Ecuador home had witnessed large objects emerging from many lakes surrounding them. Her first experience happened as a 12-year-old while walking with her parents. As they made their way along a trail, they walked into a clearing where they were met by a football field long, dark object, silent and still about 75 feet to 100 feet away. They stared for a few seconds, then the object began to move upward along the side of the mountain, accelerating slightly, entering a cloud and disappearing. This was an upsetting memory for her, and she added that the topic was never made light of in her village. She says people in her area are Incan descent, have many similar stories. They are careful to respect the sanctity of whatever or whomever lives among those in the lakes. Wow. Yeah, wow. Can you imagine going up to some high altitude lake and see something come right out of the water? It's like right out of X-Files. Well, that movie, if you buy it on DVD, I have a special interview I did with the FBI agent whose stories made the first year of the X-Files. This is true. And I got to say, it was one of the most interesting interviews I've ever done in my life. Since that time, I interviewed him again after the premiere of the movie, at the premiere, and that's on this video channel. At the screen you're looking at right here on the bottom left, below the screen, is our logo. Click on that. Once you click on that, it'll take you to another screen, and across the bottom, it'll have 3 statements there. One of them is videos. If you click on videos, it'll take you to all of our videos. If you go there, you go to the premiere interviews. One of them I did with a Navajo Ranger. Fascinating interview. So, anyhow, the stories of things coming out of lakes, water. We just did the last class on the UFOs about USOs. A lot of people think, well, the UFOs must come from the stars and they must go back to their home every time. that they leave. No, not true. Most of the time they're right here on Earth. Yeah. And what's a better place to hide than in a deep lake? Deep parts of the ocean. Nobody will ever bother you. Next letter. Hey Dave, thank you so much for your amazing work. I watch all your videos and documentaries. I bought 2 copies of Missing 411 The UFO Connection at Christmas. Thank you. One for me and one for my dad. We both loved it. My dad is the only person in my family with an open mind about the existence of UFOs and Bigfoot. You, sir, are lucky that you have somebody in your family you can talk to like that. I think most of the people in my family think I'm absolutely nuts. Angie doesn't, but I think most of the people in my family do. I had an experience with a UFO in 2008 in East Texas, about 20 miles north of Nacogdoches, on my then boyfriend's grandparents' land. They had about 40 acres, most of it densely wooded with a cabin and a pond. It was on the 4th of July holiday. We had set off fireworks right after dark for my boyfriend's nephews. We were night owls, and everyone had gone to bed except us. Therefore, we decided to walk around the property on the clearing and along a private gravel road. We had a giant mag light flashlight so we could see in the dark and watch for copperheads. Keep in mind that all we had with us were flip phones and no video capabilities. The strange event started when we were standing on the gravel road looking at the stars when we noticed a bright white light that seemed to be low to the ground following the county road at the distance. For a minute I thought it might be a car with one headlight because I couldn't hear a loud engine like that of a motorcycle. We watched it and mentioned it to my boyfriend. Then we watched the light move onto the neighbor's property about a half mile away in our direct line of sight. Then Chris said, my boyfriend, might be some guy spotlighting deer because there was a lot of illegal hunting going on out here. He was worried that they might accidentally shoot us, so he flashed the mag light 3 times at the big light. Immediately after that, the large white light instantly shot straight up into the sky within a few seconds. Then it moved to the very far right within a second. Never made a sound. Then it seemed to move directly in front of us again, and it started to descend slowly and move towards us. Soon it was low to the ground and floating over his grandparents' land and still coming towards us. My boyfriend's jaw dropped, and he was frozen. I was freaking out and pulled his arm and said, "Let's go." He snapped out of it and yelled, "Run!" and we ran as fast as we could back towards the cabin. We didn't see anything behind us, but we didn't turn around until we were back at the travel trailer in front of the cabin. We went inside, and then he said he was going to go back out there in his convertible Mustang and asked if I wanted to go back with him. I said, "No way," and he took off. He came back later and looked as white as a sheet. He said that the light was moving in the sky and it flew over his car and the electrical system went out. He couldn't get it started again without putting it in neutral and rolling down a small hill. I've heard that before quite a few times. He was so creeped out he wouldn't talk about it for months. Said to be the weirdest encounter I've ever had. No one believed us. Everyone thought we were drunk or something. We didn't ever do drugs and we weren't drinking that night. His grandparents were strict Church of Christ members and didn't allow alcohol on their property. Thanks for reading this. Hope you're well. Keep up the great work. The number of times stories just like that have happened are off the chart. I mean, you've been following me here for months probably, and how many stories like that have you heard? Now, it's interesting that they flash a light at it and boom, it reacted to it. So you know it just wasn't some random whatever. It had intellect behind it. Hi Dave, I'm writing you today to talk about my experience of seeing a UFO last fall in November 2022 in Edmonton, Alberta. I was on my way to work as my shift starts at 6 a.m. in the morning. Oh gosh. There was one time in my life where I had to get up really early. I did not like it. I'm not a real early morning person. As I do every morning, walking to the garage to head out to work, I look up at the night sky just to look at the stars and the planets. I've always been fascinated about the universe. I've experienced unusual sightings in the past that I can't explain. They say once you have seen a UFO, you'll always see one when you least expect it. I'd written to you before about my experience seeing one when I was about 9 years old. It was on a winter night. That winter night, it was a bright round object as big as a full moon moving across the sky. I don't know why, but that experience comes back to me sometimes when I saw and felt seeing it. As I walked back through the back gate, I happened to see an object round in shape, shining a bright white light moving across the sky in a straight line from east to west. The morning sky in November in Edmonton is pretty dark, but because I live in the city, there's a light pollution, but I can still see stars and planets. At first I thought it was a satellite, but I have seen satellites before, and this object seemed to be different. As it moved across the sky, it suddenly stopped. Satellites don't stop in flight, so I was a little bit in awe of what I was seeing. It was like 20 seconds or so, but it continued on, but stopped again. Seeing it stop the second time was now a bit amazing. Again, the second time might have been 20 seconds. I continued on, but just like a flash, it was gone and no longer visible. I stood there for a while, straining to see if it might reappear again, but there was nothing. I made my way to the car and drove to work. Not sure what I saw that morning, but again, it was one of those experiences I've had in the past that will stay with me. For the length of my shift that day, the image kept replaying in my mind. Thanks, Dave, for all you do and your researches and your compassion for giving us the facts on the missing and facts on paranormal events. From myself and my fur baby Montana cat, take care, Dave, Huck, and Angie. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Edmonton, if you've never been there, you need to go there. You need to make the drive north through Alberta. And you got to hit up Calgary, you got to hit up Edmonton, and then you got to go west, and you got to go through the Rockies. Alberta has some of the most beautiful mountains in the world, and it's definitely worth a spring, summer, fall trip to go through it, 100%. Hey Dave, I need to tell you about an odd experience that happened to me and my wife in the early morning hours of March 31st this year, 2023. Oh, okay. My wife and I went to bed at 11:30. Typically, I fall asleep first and fast. However, this night my heart was racing and I felt anxious for the first hour of trying to sleep. At about 12:30, I hear what sounds like a high-pitched whining coming from the outside of my window. It almost sounded like a child crying in the distance. Just as I try to convince myself it's not there, it becomes louder. Now I distinctively hear what sounds like 3 separate cats whining together. At this point, my German Shepherd is confirming this with a few low, short, "I'm trying to warn you, Dad," barks. At this point, the hairs of my arms are standing up and it feels like the air is charged with electric anxiety. I get out of bed and grab my gun from the nightstand. I do not know what this animal is, but it's obvious there is something. I put my ear close to the window and listened. Now I hear what sounds like 3 separate cats whining. Not one, but 3 separate tones. Strangely, they were all moaning in unison, all following the same pitch, intonation. As a side note, I have over 14 years of musical experience, so trust me when I tell you there were 3 separate vocal sounds, all following the same low to high and back down the pitch pattern. Because of the layout of my house, it makes it easier to see the area outside my window by going to my son's room and looking out the window. I quickly opened the blinds in my son's room and turned on the light illuminating the area outside. I'm startled to see a very large, probably 15-pound, pure white cat staring back at me. The cat's fur was unnaturally white, like a fluffy stuffed animal toy, and it stared at me with eyes so blue the only word to accurately describe them would be artificial. At this point, I'm more annoyed and tired, so I head back to the door, planning to go outside and scare it off. But just when I reached the door, suddenly every fiber in my body started screaming, "Do not go outside." I felt a wave of predatory feelings wash over me, and my dog refused to leave the room. I am a firm believer in listening to your gut instead of going outside. I knocked loudly on the window several times and it ran away. The morning after explaining this to my wife, who said she hardly remembered the experience and was sound asleep, she couldn't understand why I thought the cat looked off. As I was relaying the details of it, I realized something. The paws were totally clean. There was no grass, leaves, twigs, or dirt on the paws. And where it was, there was no way for it to get at least a little dirt on it as it got its way up to the location. I don't know what this is, but it honestly scared the heck out of me. We live in a tight neighborhood where the house next to you is less than 12 feet apart in the middle of the suburbs, so this type of experience has never happened to me before. Stay safe, Dave. I'll see you in Ocala next month. Well, thank you. I look forward to seeing you. Tell you a quick story. Angie has a sister that lives in Colorado. Kind of lives in the boondocks of Colorado. And one night, in the middle of the night, she doesn't have anybody around her. She hears something. She thought at first it was somebody crying. Then she thought it was a cat crying. And she's an animal person. And she said it was making sounds like it was in distress. And she told me, she goes, Dave, I wanted to go out there and check for it. So I went out and took my flashlight and looked all around, couldn't find it. And there weren't a lot of places to hide right around the area that it was in. She comes in and starts doing it again, goes back outside, searches again, comes back in. She says, I just had this funny feeling about it. And I told her, I have no idea what it was, just like I have no idea what this was. But many Native Americans have told me that Bigfoot has the ability to mimic anything in the world, and it will sound immediately like that. Well, other researchers who I know have said they've been walking through the woods and been nowhere near their wife and heard their wife over their shoulder say, hey, so-and-so, come here. And they whip their head around, there's nobody there. Point of this, that man should not have gone outside. And don't you go outside if you hear something like that. Hey Dave, I loved your Bigfoot classes, they're great. When you spoke of portals, it made me think of how I've had some strange occurrences on familiar pathways, both inside and outside my house. I wonder if someone wearing a patch, path can cause a gap in a portal or vice versa. Or maybe your mind is in a different state while traveling a similar path. In around 1990, I lived in Pennsylvania in an old building in a basement apartment that was partly underground. It was built on a steep hillside. One day, walking from the kitchen through the dining room into the living room, I saw, for a couple seconds, what looked like, quote, cousin it, from the Addams Family TV show. Just a heap of hair with feet, no hat. It was about 12 inches high with long dark hair. I guess you got to be a certain age to know this. Now, I do remember. And if you can never watch the Addams Family, try to find a segment that talks about cousin it. It's like a small haystack. It was about 12 inches high with dark brown hair, like a small haystack. It passed me going in the opposite direction as if in a hurry. It waddled from side to side and seemed grumpy somehow. Wow. 10 or 12 years later, in another house, first floor, in another state, New York, as I opened my bedroom door to walk through a room to another room, I was surprised to see this creature again. Yeah, I'd be surprised. It was surprised also, and it jumped off the path and disappeared. I shut my door and stayed in my bedroom a minute. When I came out, there was nothing out of the ordinary. This time the creature was bigger, about 2 feet tall. Well, it grew. It was older. I felt it was the same one. Since then, I've always wondered if pathways are somehow special. Thanks so much for reading this. I know it sounds crazy. I know this one is really weird. Yeah, I gotta admit it, it's really weird. Can't argue that. Next one. Hey Dave, thank you for your time as an accomplished investigator, your compassion and tremendous insight, including the factual news segments and Bigfoot class and UFO class, as well as on the attention you draw to mental health during these difficult, unpredictable times. Humanity is struggling. I often wonder what aspects of us as humans could extraterrestrial life need from our human race, causing them to abduct humans and animals on our planet with all their advanced intelligence and technology. In addition, though, we humans abduct and slaughter our livestock and other animals for food purposes, scientific experiments, cloning, etc. It's a pretty violent process, to say the least. Should we be surprised then that our animals are abducted, mutilated by outside forces beyond this earth? Some years ago, I used to hike with an ex-boyfriend, and though we dated for many years, I always separated myself from him to urinate. Most occasions completely out of sight. Since being acquainted with your research, I would never separate in the woods for any reason. What a strange universe we live in. Oh, that is true. Yeah. When you go to the bathroom in the woods, the rule we have is the person urinating has eyes on the other person. Yes, I do turn my back. And then Angie has her eyes on me. If anything happens, she'll scream. Or she has a big gun. She'll let out a few rounds. Next one. Hey Dave, I've been following you for 4 years and thoroughly enjoy your work, movies, books, Bigfoot classes, UFO classes, and the news. I'm a subscriber. I've left 5-star reviews on all your work whenever I can and emulate your thinking when I am back in the woods with personal locations, etc. One of the letters you read a while ago really made me think of a movie called Time Trap, where some hikers go into a cave in search of someone and get suspended in time. Their time goes by barely at all, while outside years go by every second. The letter was from a female hiker that went off trail from her partner to go to the bathroom. As I recall, she felt kind of odd, but carried on seeing a moose walking in circles. Moves on, and after doing her business, returns only to find her friend gone, and later discovered a couple of hours had gone by. I believe she and many others come across these time traps where others don't see them. They call for them, but the others don't see them. Some say they hear a voice, but that could be something else or in a dimension only a thin sliver of time and space away from ours. She was lucky and managed to step out of it to return. But I believe so many others aren't so lucky. I'd be curious to know your thoughts on this, Dave, and also if you could follow the podcast. Thanks, and keep up the truly wonderful and inspirational work you're doing. Oh, and I bet that moose is still going in circles. Couple things. I've talked about this many times. When we did the movie, actually a 2-hour special on Amazon called Vanished. You can go in there and watch it. History Channel owns it. I don't get paid anything. But in there's a story about a man, Dale, and Dale gets lost at Mesa Verde National Park. And in the area he was lost, 2 different people over a 24-hour period hear him calling for help. And they massively searched the area, and he wasn't found. And then he's found years later in an area nowhere near where he disappeared. And it caused a lot of consternation, because at the time, we did talk about maybe he's in a portal in another dimension. He can see out, but we can't see him. Very scary. Very scary. Do I think it's possible? Why wouldn't I think it was possible? Hey David, I've been following your channel and your work since the beginning. To be honest, I don't even know how I came across it, but we both know there are no coincidences in this world. Only what is and what is not. I'm from faraway Slovakia, a small country in the center east of Europe. I often think of the fact how similar the problems of today's decaying world are no matter where you are, especially listening to your segment of the factual news. Uncontrolled migration, the state of working against its citizens, systematical disintegration of family values, morals. There is no doubt these changes are indeed regulated and organized, the biggest target being the truth, in both the most simple pragmatic sense as well as the biblical family. I come from a family with a lot of history. There were many educated and successful people in both lines, including doctors, theologians, rabbis, army generals. My father was a general. My grandfather died fighting in World War II, and my great-uncle, general and minister of war during the monarchy. I myself am very keen on all these things in the military service. I used to fence. I box and shoot. Not typical for a woman. Me and my daughter both ride horses too. What is different from my predecessors, though, is my gift, which I sometimes call a deny. Since I was a small and very sensible to all things otherworldly and never once was wrong in any of my predictions and visions. Often you see much more than what you'd want to. I will not mention all my experiences, as that would rather be a book than a letter, only those related to you and your field. Although I am convinced it's all part of one thing, a key to which we have not figured out yet, but we're close. A few years ago, a short time before I started following you, we were in the woods with my two cousins. My daughter and cousin's small son and daughter. We all knew the place very well. We used to go there quite often during childhood and adolescence. The area is high in elevation, wooded. There are trails throughout, as well as concrete road that leads to the top of the mountains, which serves skiers during the winter season and dirt terrain bikers, four-wheelers for the rest of the year. Lots of rock and game, bears, deer. There's traffic, but it's never crowded. However, you almost always meet someone passing up or down the route, as well as sounds of wild nature. It was about 3 to 4 p.m. We were coming down from the trip when we noticed a sudden change in the ambience. The wood was completely silent. In a matter of a switch, no bees, fleas, flies, birds, streams, distant chatter, all of which were there during our whole trip. The woods were dead silent. What was even worse is there was an eerie feeling that none of us could describe nor explain. I asked all, "Do you feel strange?" Except the children, who were not aware of anything trying to chase each other. All three of us agreed it was a feeling of being watched by something or someone. Like it was out of its reality, space, and time. In a matter of a minute, maximum 2, I said, "We need to run. Fast. Now." We did. We dragged the children with us after a few hundred meters where I intuitively felt it was safe to stop. We did. And sure enough, the woods were back to normal. Nevertheless, we descended very fast, highly alert for the rest of the hike. Smart move. I need to say I never felt safe in the woods, despite my love and admiration for nature, fauna, and flora. Especially in the night, the woods are very tricky and are a hiding place for beings and phenomena beyond our understanding. Lots of lost people in the woods and national parks here too. But authorities do not focus on that. At times, as we are connected to police services and forces over here, cases of disappearances and suspicious deaths in the city near water too. Another story I want to mention is connected to your beloved son, Ben, whose passing is a very sad one, and I feel deeply for you and your family. Right before the end of last year, a month and a half ago, a very good friend of mine decided to end his life by jumping from a window into an inner block of a house where he lived. Long story short, I was the one who found him along with his then boyfriend and police officers. The building, the apartment itself was beautiful. It won architectural design prizes for reconstruction, but I always hated it. For the 3 years he lived there, I dreaded going in. I never felt comfortable there and could not ever sleep there, to a point I had to book a hotel room during that night. The circumstances of the whole case are odd. To say moderately, however, that I want to pinpoint 2 things. The last time I saw my friend alive, his sky blue eyes turned almost hollow black. His vibe was very heavy and dark, and I said, "This will end in tragedy." Not even a week later, he was gone. On the photo he took right before he jumped, which we found on his phone, he literally had 2 faces. half of it was different than the other, but not by normal things like asymmetry, etc. It looked like a joker. There was no other word to describe it. If I showed it to anyone without them having a clue about the story and the circumstances, it would scare them. That's how unsettling and dark it was. A few months before his death, he told me something attacked him in his apartment during the night, in his sleep. He was very disturbed about it and asked me about it, as he knew I know about these things. I told him that the battle for his soul had begun and he needs to fight now. I advised him to turn to prayer, Jesus and God, and to change his pattern of living. Less party, alcohol, more sports, walks, getting rid of toxicity, cleaning the relationships, and trying to find his true self. Stop there for a second. See, I believe all this stuff. Cleaning the soul, exercising, don't party, don't drink a lot of alcohol. It looked like something literally took him. Also from the police investigation, there are many things unclear. As if it was time within time. Hours are missing, hard to explain. I'm not sure if you know, but there is a connection of demonic possession and overlap within suicide murder. Even psychiatry is aware of the correlation, but refuses to acknowledge it on a mainstream level. The denial of it and the refusal to scientifically investigate these things is enormous. What I'm trying to say is that the act of murder as well as suicide can have reasons which are way beyond our understanding and should not be simply assigned just to a mental illness disorder. I agree. The weak and damaged are being taken, but the biggest trophy and the challenge are the pure and enlightened. This could be a Ben's case. Thank you for all you do, for your bravery and your courage to face these things and digging deeper. I've followed your journey, and it's just spectacular to see how you've evolved as a being and how willing you are to listen carefully to the calling with an open mind, yet still remain fair, rational, and wise. There are only two armies in this universe, and each one of us is a soldier or either or. I have no doubt who your master is. Wow. It was a heavy letter. I've had several people tell me that you're not crazy if you're alone and you start talking to your deceased mom or dad or relative or son or daughter. That's good. Because if you heard some of the conversations I have when I'm alone, you would definitely think that Dave is a little off his rocker. I think we need to talk. And a lot of people would say, well, we have an angel that guides us. We have a spiritual angel. I've had more than one person say that Ben's always looking over my shoulder. I hope he's there. During these times, I need a pat on the back every once in a while, just to let me know I'm going the right direction. Because this path is different. To stay on the path and to not get drugged down is a hard thing at times. And seeing the reaction that these cases have on family can be devastating. So, here we go. Let's talk about the first case. Just outside of Tucson, Arizona. The young man's name was Don Curtis, 18 years old, went missing November 8th, 1969 on Mount Lemmon. Here's the map, Tucson, Mount Lemmon. Now, Don was from Highland Park, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. Traveled to Arizona to do some sightseeing and prospecting. He'd been staying at the YMCA in Tucson. where he met another guy named Brian McNamara, 20, also staying there. McNamara and Curtis became quick friends and both wanted to go out and search around. McNamara was a native of Staten Island, and he had recently graduated from gunsmithing school in Colorado and then traveled down to Tucson to do some prospecting. Well, the guys had a kinship about them, trusted each other, decided to look after each other. And November 8th, they decided to take a trip up to Mount Lemmon, do some prospecting. They had one canteen, didn't carry any food. It was November, so it wasn't really hot up there. But as the guys took off, got deeper and deeper into the mountains, late in the day, Curtis's legs started to cramp up and he said, I can't go on any further. So McNamara said he'd walk out and get help and be back, and they separated. Mistake number 1. Well, McNamara came out of the mountain on November 14th, 6 days after he disappeared. He came out at a place called Upper Sabino Canyon, and he found a man and a woman that drove him to Tucson. He got to Tucson that night. He called the sheriff and tried to report Don Curtis as missing. Well, what's weird is that the sheriff told him back then, it's too late. You can't report anybody right now. We can't help you. You need to come back, call in the morning. Well, that would never happen now. But back in 69, maybe it did. And it did because they had the recording. Next morning at 9 o'clock, McNamara calls the sheriff, Pima County, reports his friend is missing, explains where, and right away the Pima County Sheriff sent several units up into that region looking for Mr. Curtis. Well, they got told that Curtis had some sort of leg injury or disability, and the sheriff decided to put a couple planes up in the air, brought in a couple of canine units from a city called Florence, brought in search and rescue people on horseback from the U.S. Forest Service. They had 200 people out there looking over a very wide swath of land. A lot of boulders, a lot of granite in this area, and not a lot of bushy things to inhibit your visibility. Well, that was on November 14th, all this started. On November 30th, 6 days into the search and rescue, bad weather hit the region and stopped the search. They hadn't found anything. Now they knew that Curtis would have had a canteen, a gold pan, metal detector. None of that was found. Well, on December 24th, the Pima County Sheriffs decide we're going to make another shot at this. So they get 100 people, and they go out, get a plane, get cadaver canines. They don't come up with anything. And again, as I've said before, a cadaver canine can pick up a scent miles away. Nothing. So again, this incident happened in 1969. 54 years ago. And nothing's been found. That metal detector should have been on the ground. The canteen should have been on the ground. Come on, this stuff doesn't disappear. Gold pan would essentially almost last forever at this point. So since that time, 54 years ago, thousands of hunters and hikers have hit Mount Lemmon. They absolutely should have found something. Weirdly, this mountain has had several people vanish on it in the past. And I'm going to remind you that it is very close to a major population area. Very close. The city is wider than it is the distance to the mountain. Now, this is Dunn, a young man who disappeared. 18 years old, from Highland Park, Illinois, suburb of Chicago. Goes missing November 8th, 1969, never found. Seems very odd. But when you look at the number of young, healthy white males that have disappeared and never been found, not so odd anymore. In fact, almost predictable at certain times. Now, Mount Lemmon is a cluster of missing people, and it's not a small cluster. A lot of people say, oh, you have to be way up in the wilderness, and you have to be way far from a population zone to disappear. No. You can be real close. So, cluster zone with someone who matches the profile of somebody who goes missing. The next case involves somebody that also matches a profile. In past cases, I've written about a number of physicians, physicists, mathematicians who have disappeared and have never been found. Highly intellectual. They were alone, and they were never found. Very odd. This case involves a physician, Dr. Wallace Dunn, 81 years old. He went missing July 12th, 2013, from an area north of Anchorage, Alaska. Now, he was an ear, nose, and throat physician from the 1960s to the 1990s in Anchorage. This was the official flyer from Alaska State Troopers on Dr. Dunn. He was very healthy for his age, very active, and he did well in life. He had a house in Anchorage. He also had a house in Big Lake that was kind of north of Anchorage. And during the winter months, he spent that time in Texas. He had a daughter that he spoke to 4 or 5 times a week that was an attorney in Anchorage. She said her dad was super sharp, spry, liked to do his own work. And to get around, he drove a 1998, again, this is 2013, 1998 gray Ford F-150 pickup. And when I say he was spry at 81 years old, the morning of July 12th, the last confirmed day he was seen, he played tennis at the Alaska Club North in Anchorage. And that was one of the last confirmed sightings. There was another alleged sighting of him the same day at a soccer game, kids' soccer game. Unconfirmed which one was the last. But he told his daughter that he would spend the weekend up at the cabin. And she didn't think it was a big deal that he didn't call for a few days. 5 days later, she goes up to the cabin. Truck's not there. Doesn't look like he had been there for a while. Calls the Alaska State Troopers, reports him as missing. Alaska State Troopers send out a bulletin on the truck, and they find it parked fairly close to the cabin at the end of what's called West Sistina Parkway. Not very far from the cabin. Now, this is Big Lake where the cabin's located. or Big Lake, where the cabin's located right here. His truck is found right here. Anchorage is right here. Anchorage is right there. So in the truck, they find his shotgun sitting on the front seat, and they find his chainsaw laying in the bed of the truck. And in some ways it's comforting, because they knew right away that there's no foul play. Well, why is that, Dave? Well, you see, criminals take things that are valuable. Shotgun for sure would have been taken by any criminal. And the chances are in Alaska, the chainsaw would have for sure been taken as well. But they were both there and both operable. So the state troopers send in an entire search team, canines, and they search that area. A very wide area. Well, they come up with a witness who said that she possibly saw that man, Dr. Dunn, at a place called the Montana Creek Campground on July 13th. Would have been the day after he was confirmed seen. And the man that they saw was requesting a ride to Denali National Park. Well, the troopers heard this. They contact his daughter, and the daughter says, no, that's entirely outside the realm of my dad. He would not be doing that. But he was described as very sharp, smart, athletic. When the troopers were done working the area of the truck, they went back to the cabin, worked that area, didn't find anything, no recent tracks. So what would he be doing in that area? Well, the consensus would be, if I was the detective, use it to cut some wood for the cabin. Chainsaw, shotgun for bears. And he was spry enough, he was playing tennis just the day before. He went up to cut some wood. Now, there was no wood in the back of the truck. But let's think about what could have happened here. In my guesstimation, he drove up and got out, and he might have been looking for some wood to cut, and something happened. Or he got out to use the bathroom, and something happened. Now, if it was me in Alaska, and I was going to get out and start looking for some wood, there's no way in heck Dave is going to walk around the woods in Alaska without a gun. And Dr. Dunn had the gun, so my guess is he would have taken it if that's what he would have been doing. But maybe he was just going to the bathroom and something happened. I don't know. But there was a statement from Alaska State Troopers that Matsu Search and Rescue sent in several dogs, and Alaska State Troopers had Helo 1 in that area with canines for multiple days. Didn't find anything. So what could have happened? Now, this area that he disappeared in, I want you to just look at the amount of water right in that area. Tons of water everywhere. Whenever I think about Alaska and I think about all that water, I just remember there's a lot of mosquitoes. But water, again, one of those primary things. Canines never picked up a scent. Where is he? It goes all the way back to what I stated at the beginning of this segment. He fits one of those profiles of a group of people that have disappeared and never been found. Super smart people, physicians, physicists, mathematicians. Very odd. And to never be found. The supposed sighting by Montana Creek. So this is where the truck was found. Montana Creek is way up here, a long ways away to walk it. Do I think he was sighted at Montana Creek? I don't think so. I don't think that was him. Possible, I guess, but they said it was a possible sighting. It wasn't confirmed. So I tend to think, I don't think so. Know what would I do if I was that family? That's just, I can only speak for me, but I probably spend every weekend for the rest of that summer going into that area. And I would have broken that area around his truck into quadrants. And each weekend just spend a weekend searching each quadrant looking for my dad. Would have been me. But one thing for certain, if there's one group I want searching for me in Alaska, Alaska State Troopers. They do a good job, they have lots of experience, and they throw a lot of resources at the case. Do I actually think he was in the area when they were searching? No, I don't. Is he in the area now? I don't know. But how many times have I told you that months, weeks, days later, after the search is over, they're found in an area previously searched? Makes no sense. So there's two cases for you. Don Curtis, 18 years old, missing just outside of Tucson, Arizona on Mount Lemmon. Giant search, never found. Dr. Wallace Dunn, missing just outside of Anchorage at a place called Big Lake. Kind of get a good look at it. Never found. Now these are two cases that we found within the last couple months that we've never put in a book before. These are brand new cases. I'm sure that somebody's going to take them and claim them for theirs now and put them on their website. But as long as the cases get publicity and it can lead to some ending for the family, then more power to them. I hope that the family can get some answers to their questions. In the meantime, our website on missing people is the CanAm Missing Project, like Canadian American CanAm Missing Project. And the website is canammissing.com. The store, NA, like North America, nabigfootsearch.com. Go to the online store. Watch the movie. You don't have to buy it. You can rent it online, Amazon, YouTube, iTunes. And the big thing, subscribe. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And let's do something nice for the people in your community. It doesn't cost us anything to be nice, folks. Smile, open the door, help an elderly or disabled person if they need some help. The sun will shine brightly on you for doing good deeds. Paulides out.